Hello, and welcome to Tech 5, 5 technology stories that I think you should know about. And who am I? I'm Sean Thuris, a software developer in the San Francisco Bay Area where I run a small technology consultancy. Story number 1, 3D printed eye. So this gentleman has needed a prosthetic eye since he was 20, and he's 47 now. He was fitted with a 3D printed eye from Germany. The difference between this and a normal glass eye, as we would say, is that those typically have essentially a drawing of an iris. The difference here is that light can pass through this 3D printed eye to the back of the eye and then bounce back, giving it a more lifelike, realistic appearance. Fitting traditional prosthetics requires a mold to be taken of the eye socket, whereas in 3D prosthetic eye development, the socket is scanned digitally to create a detailed image. The hospital said that this eye took half the time that it normally takes to develop a prosthetic eye, taking it from 6 weeks down to 2 or 3. Story number 2, Lilium's Air Taxi. Speaking of Germany, a German company called Lilium has announced they'll produce a 7-seat version of their electric air taxi. It looks something like this. So the thought behind producing this 7-seat plane with a limited range is that it could replace the hiring of a large limousine or SUV or Mercedes Sprinter van, something like that. The aircraft promises a cruise speed of 175 miles per hour at an altitude of 10,000 feet and a range of 155 plus miles. I think I'd rather be on the plane in that first 155 part and not so much during the plus part. So they've decided to go with 36 of these small fans. They say these are quieter than larger fans and also they can scale up better. Presumably that means they would just add more of these same fans rather than that they'd literally scale them up to be larger, because in that case they would make more noise again. A couple of interesting things about this. They were funded under a SPAC, which is a special purpose acquisition company. So a SPAC is an investment vehicle that allows a company to go public without having to go through as much regulatory paperwork as would be necessary if they actually had a product. So it's basically a template of a company that relies on the reputations of its senior managers to draw investment, and they then turn around and acquire some other company within their field of expertise. And the other aspect here is that a Chinese company called Pantuo Aviation has come out with concept art that looks remarkably similar, but I thought it was interesting here. This shows how it will take off and land. So the fans will be pointed directly down. This is just concept art. They haven't shown a prototype yet. Story number 3, and those of you who were here last week will know to expect a story about Antarctica. 34 million years ago, Antarctica went from not having ice sheets to having ice sheets. And why this happened, what the mechanism behind it was, has been debated for some time. 34 million years ago, there were land bridges connecting Antarctica to South America and to Australia. Australia was conjoined with Tasmania at the time. And these scientists found by modeling the movements of the ocean in the Southern Ocean surrounding Antarctica that when there was at least one of those 2 land bridges still intact, that warmer water would be brought down near the coast of Antarctica. But as soon as both of those bridges were absent, then a circumpolar current started to flow around and it diverted those. So here we have a depiction of, from the perspective of the South Pole, all of the major gyres that exist now, all of the major ones. This Antarctic subpolar current circles this way, and the Antarctic circumpolar current circles this way. But when there was a bridge here and here, there was the Weddell gyre in the South Atlantic going here and bringing some of this water from a bit further north down. And on this side, there was the other gyre, the Ross Gyre, bringing water from the South Pacific. And here's their article. So this is called the Tasmanian Gateway, and this is called the Drake Passage here. They modeled the ocean current flows when these were submerged 300 meters, then 600, and then 1,500. And what they found was that when these land bridges were relatively close to the surface, you had these warmer areas of water making it down to the Antarctic coast. But as soon as they were at least 600 meters deep, then you had essentially cold water all around the coast of Antarctica continuously. And so that's 2 weeks in a row of Antarctica. Story number 3, Microsoft under fire for adding short-term loan offers to Edge. Short-term loan offers sounds like a very strange feature to add to a browser, but what they're talking about is an installment payment service, which essentially is short-term loan. Microsoft plans to integrate a purchase financing service called Zip in their Edge browser. Edge is essentially a version of Chrome. Zip allows users to split a purchase that's from $35 to $1,000 into 4 payments. Rather than offering an interest rate, users pay a $1 fee with each payment. So $4 altogether, which is a good deal if your purchase is on the large side, but a high interest rate if it's a smaller one. And here's an example of what you'll see in Edge. And of course, there are many other installment services. I don't know that this is an exhaustive list, but there are a whole lot of them, as you can see. They keep coming. And here's a breakdown of some of these services, their repayment terms, their interest rates and fees, their effect on credit scores, and so on. We have to wonder why Microsoft would have done this. And the article here says, perhaps Zip paid Microsoft something up front for access to millions of new customers. I have a hard time believing no money is changing hands here. And that's what I assume as well. In my opinion, this was not a good move. It's not a good look. And I won't be surprised if they remove it under pressure. Story number 5, it's another space story. Yes, every week we have a space story. And that's not because I'm space crazy. It's because now there is more going on with space exploration, space vehicles, satellites, space tourism than ever, by far. So this week, it's the engine for the SpaceX Starship. The engine is called the Raptor, and the idea is that they will have this relatively simple and modular design of this engine so that they can produce lots of them. And when a rocket design needs more thrust, they will simply add another one of these engines. So that they'll have 33 of them in the first stage, the bottom of the rocket, and another 6 in the second stage. So the spacecraft itself is the second stage, and that's called Starship. The booster is called Super Heavy. Well, the reason this is in the news is that Elon Musk sent out a rather desperate-sounding email to his SpaceX employees telling them that they were running into production problems and the fate of the company was at risk. If I don't seem overly concerned, it's because there were people who came forward and explained that this was something of a rally the troops email. He wasn't actually concerned that they would go out of business, but because all of their future rockets depend on this Raptor engine, they need to get it figured out and they need to make lots of them as soon as possible. Speaking about SpaceX's Starship, there's a long article in Ars Technica about the uses to which Starship might be put. Because the Super Heavy booster is able to lift far more mass than typical boosters in the past, scientists are now thinking about developing instrument packages that would be much larger and heavier than what they had been able to design in the past. So they're thinking about, rather than something the size of a small refrigerator, something the size of a small house. And the article also says that much of the current sort of fervor and interest in space exploration came in 2009 when a projectile was crashed into a crater near the moon's south pole, and in the spray of debris that came up, they saw that there was ice, that there was water vapor. That meant that there was water on the moon, which would make it easier to put bases on the moon. And then there was discovery of water elsewhere, Europa, Enceladus, on and beneath the surface of Mars, possibly the interior of Pluto, or Neptune's largest moon, Triton. So not only would water be handy if people were in any of those places, but also the presence of water in the past, now as ice, but the presence of water in the past might mean there was some form of life at the time that the water was liquid. And then here's the photo of the Starship mounted on the booster, and it is a very, very tall rocket. Also in this article, there's an interesting discussion of the politics behind this. And by politics, I don't mean partisan politics, but rather interagency and intra-agency politics, the competition for money and prestige and so on, and the desire of congresspeople to have any large project have some components made in their districts or in their states. But SpaceX tries to cut costs by having fewer subcontractors. So unlike these projects that you would have seen during the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, where a new piece of military equipment was being developed, they would make sure to spread around the contracts for various different things, wiring harnesses and body panels and avionics and so forth in various different states so that the representatives in Congress would support it. In November, Elon Musk spoke to scientists at the National Academies and said, "Starship is designed to be a generalized transport mechanism for the greater solar system. You could get a 100-ton object to the surface of Europa. It is capable of transporting mass to any solid surface in the solar system." And that's pretty exciting. And finally, if you need help with any of these things, please get in touch and we will see how we can help you. Thanks for joining me. Please let me know if there are any particular themes or topics or stories that you'd like me to cover. If you liked the video, click like. If you didn't like it, click dislike, and no one will ever know because YouTube has disabled the dislike count on all videos now, so haha. And if you like more videos like this, please subscribe to the channel, share the video with anybody you think would be interested, and I'll see you next time.